Good evening. The drama of Zimbabwe's election 2023 goes on. It hasn't been resolved yet. The election results were declared by the Zimbabwe Election Commission, and they declared on Sunday that President Emmerson Mnangagwa had won. But that result is, at the present moment, it's not clear whether the opposition are going to challenge the results in a court. And if they do, then it's got to go through the court process. But if they were to accept the result, then it's not clear what SADC would say or do, because according to the SADC Elections Observer Mission, which was headed by Dr Mumba of Zambia, it's shown in the picture here. These elections were flawed and not to SADC standards. There's been movement in that SADC elders have been invited to come and review that report. They arrived in Zimbabwe today, Tuesday, the 29th of August. And it is expected that if they were to condemn it, then it would be really irrelevant. SADC would not grant ZANU-PF political legitimacy. That will be the most worrying thing. The AU itself, observer group, have also said these elections were not free, fair, and credible. But it's not clear whether at the end of the day, particularly if SADC was to say, no, they're not going to endorse the results and they're not going to grant ZANU-PF legitimacy, I believe the AU would do the same thing. But if SADC was to do something else, and I believe these elders headed by former Tanzanian President Kikwete will have a say in this. So we keenly await this SADC elders' decision on the matter. Personally, I think it would be absurd if these elders were to condemn the team led by Dr Mumba that said these elections were not free, fair, and credible. Because this is an issue that has been outstanding. SADC itself, in 2008, condemned Zimbabwe's elections and refused to grant ZANU-PF political legitimacy at the end of the 2008 elections. This is what led to the government of national unity in 2008 to 2013. ZANU-PF knows that if these elders were to agree with Dr. Mumba's team that these elections were not free, fair, and credible, then ZANU-PF will have no legitimacy at all. This will bring us back to where we were in 2008. I think what must be emphasized here is that I know many people, the minute we mention GNU, they sigh a big sigh of relief, of disappointment rather, because they think that was a waste of time. It was a waste of time only in respect of that no meaningful democratic reforms were implemented. But that was not the fault of SADC or the idea of the GNU itself. It's a subtle difference, but it is an important difference. Morgan Tsvangirai and his MDC friends had 5 years of the GNU to implement the democratic reforms. They failed to implement even one. Not even a token reform was implemented. But people should not mistake that for we don't need reforms. We still need reforms. We have had these elections. The reason why ZANU-PF was able to rig these elections is because we didn't implement reforms. We're talking of SADC failed to produce even a verified voters roll. SADC has not been independent. We know that. And the reason why is because it has never been reformed. It should have been reformed. It should have been reformed so that it is more independent. That is the argument. If we want free, fair, and credible elections, we have to implement the reforms. There is no other shortcut to that. This idea by Chamisa and company that they can win rigged elections is a nonsense. In 2018, Chamisa justified MDC Alliance participating in those elections by claiming that MDC Alliance has got stringent measures to stop ZANU-PF rigging the elections. But we all know that ZANU-PF rigged those elections. So those stringent measures, they were never even there. This year is the same thing. One of the things that Chamisa has been saying over and over again throughout these elections is that CCC has winning in rigged election strategies. Just a week before the election, he was in Matabeleland South, where he told his audience there that he had plugged all the vote rigging loopholes ZANU-PF has. We know from the Sunday elections that ZANU-PF rigged those elections. He didn't plug the loopholes. So we are where we are now because MDC failed to implement the reforms. We still need those reforms. That is important to understand. So if at the end of the day, SADC was to refuse to grant ZANU-PF political legitimacy, we will have some kind of, call it whatever you like, GNU or whatever you like, but we will have some kind of administration that was supposed to be an interim arrangement. And the most important task for that interim arrangement will be to implement the democratic reforms. I hope we will have the courage this time to stand our ground and say, no, we need people whom we know will implement those reforms. The idea that we can have ZANU-PF and CCC in that interim arrangement is pathetic. It's ridiculous. Totally nonsensical. These are the same individuals who failed to implement even one token reform during the last GNU. Can we really trust them to implement reforms now? The answer is no. If they were so competent, why didn't they implement reforms in 2008 to 2013? Which brings me to another point. If you have been following some of the media since the Sunday voting, since last Wednesday's voting and the declaration of the results on Sunday, CCC, Chamisa and these CCC supporters have positioned themselves as the heroes of this. If the CCC had not participated in these flawed elections, then Dr. Mumba and his team would have had nothing to condemn. Well, this is a ridiculous argument, considering that in the past, in 2018, it was none other than SADC leaders themselves who suggested that MDC should not participate in the elections without reforms, because ZANU-PF rigged those elections. When MDC did participate in 2013, SADC, if they had been as principles as they've shown this time round, they could have still condemned those elections if they wanted to. So it wasn't the question of CCC participating to enable SADC to do the right thing. SADC would have condemned them if, for instance, if CCC had boycotted those elections and ZANU-PF had gone ahead with them, they would have condemned them. And I think would have condemned them with even more the power and authority, considering that they were the ones who had suggested that MDC should boycott those elections. SADC have condemned these 2023 elections, not because CCC participated, but despite CCC's participation. I think SADC finally realized that the seekers of Zimbabwe's rigged elections cannot be allowed to carry on. And for CCC now to pretend they are the heroes is pathetic. Zimbabwe would have become a democracy in 2013 if CCC or MDC then had implemented the democratic reforms. And with each subsequent election, if CCC had done the honorable thing and said, no, we are not going to participate in these flawed elections, that would have put SADC under pressure not to grant ZANU-PF political legitimacy. As it so happened, we have had to wait until now, 2023, and have somebody in SADC who was prepared to stand up and be counted. And we had that individual in the form of Dr. Mumba and his team. I think that is worth celebrating. And those MDC, CCC leaders and their followers who want to claim that it was their participation in these flawed elections, or rather to go back to the 2018, 2013 elections, it was their failure to implement even one meaningful democratic reform during the whole 5 years of the GNU, and thus getting us into this mess where we had to participate in these flawed elections. They were doing us a favor. It's a pathetic argument, but it is an argument that most Zimbabweans would be very familiar with, particularly from these MDC leaders. We should still nonetheless dismiss it with the contempt that it rightly deserves. We have to hold our breath and hope that these elders, SADC elders, who have been asked to review the report from Dr. Mumba and his crew, will do the right thing. And endorse that report. I think it will be a crying shame if these elders were to turn around and say, well, the elections were not free, fair, and credible, but nonetheless, they were substantially free, fair, and credible, and therefore the ZANU-PF should be granted the political legitimacy, and all the other faults that were noted out should be put in the recommendation for to be considered for future elections. Zimbabwe has failed to hold free, fair, and credible elections since the country's independence. This is why Zimbabwe is a failed state. For 43 years, we've been stuck with a corrupt, incompetent, and tyrannical ZANU-PF regime. Yes, it is ZANU-PF who landed us in this mess. But if the truth, the whole truth is to be said, the opposition, particularly MDC/CCC, have had many opportunities in the last 23 years to end this ZANU-PF dictatorship. They failed to do so because they were corrupt and breathtakingly incompetent. And right now, they want to appear as the heroes, when the real hero is Dr. Mumba and his colleagues. We are not going to have, if these elections are condemned, the way forward would be for the country to have an interim political arrangement in which competent men and women are appointed to implement the democratic reforms. That is the primary purpose of that interim administration. And to have any of the ZANU-PF and CCC leaders into that interim arrangement is to undermine the opportunity to get those reforms implemented. And having taken the courage to stand up and say, no, we cannot endorse ZANU-PF rigged elections and grant the regime political legitimacy. I hope SADC will have the courage this time to make sure the job is done properly and not try to appease either ZANU-PF or CCC by making arrangements in which either one of the parties or both are heavily involved in the interim administration. If they fail to implement even one meaningful democratic change in 5 years of the 2008 to 2013 GNU, I cannot see how anyone can convince me that they will do the same, they will do a better job second time round. They had the opportunity to do the correct job and get it right the first time round. Why didn't they? That is a question that cannot be denied. I would like once again to thank Dr. Mumba and his SADC Election Observer Group teammates for standing up and saying the right thing and condemning these 2023 Zimbabwe elections as flawed, which they are. We need to move. Zimbabwe has been stuck in this rut for the last 43 years. We need to move. And we are not going to move by compromising. First of all, these elders must not sell the ordinary people of Zimbabwe by granting ZANU-PF political legitimacy. And then afterwards, they should not compromise the interim administration by appointing ZANU-PF or CCC leaders into that administration. But first things first, I think Dr. Mumba and his team have done their bit. Now we have got to await to see what our friends, the so-called elders, who are being headed by former Tanzanian President Jakaya Kikwete, the panel of elders, whether they will do the right thing. We are watching, the world is watching this panel of elders to see whether they will do right by Zimbabwe. All they've got to do is admit the truth that is there, that these elections were flawed, that ZANU-PF does not deserve political legitimacy. That is the right thing to do. And we are hoping that these elders will do the right thing for a change. Zimbabwe deserves to move out of this mess. The people of Zimbabwe have never held free, fair, and credible elections. Please, do the right thing. Thank you and good night.